Hi, this is Chris Gabbitas, Artistic Director of Phoenix Chorale. But I'm delighted that today we can sit with composer Joanna Marsh, who is British but lives at the moment in Dubai in the Middle East and is feeding into our Horizons program. Horizons is this concept of home, of community and a sense of belonging. And as humans, we all crave that and we need that. But we also look at what's over the fence, what is in the beyond, and is the grass greener, and can we exercise our wanderlust and go out there and see if we can find pastures new. Sometimes we return home, sometimes we settle where we find those pastures. And Joanna's piece feeds into particular aspects of that, and I would love for her to speak with us about that today. So hi Jo, welcome, lovely to see you.
So nice to be here.
Yeah, tell us a bit about your piece.
So this was a piece inspired by some Syrian poetry by a poet whose name is Adonis, who is his full name Ali Ahmad Said Esber. And I actually found him online. I do a lot of looking for different kinds of texts that are from the Middle Eastern region because I live in the Middle East. So I find it really interesting to find new people that I wouldn't discover otherwise. And I was looking for something that would support the ideas of the series, because I think, as you say, looking at Horizons is a big topic. And what I eventually decided to look for was to find something about the sea, poetry about the sea, because that's the horizon that feels like the most unreachable, the widest and most distant, and longest. When you have a view of the sea, you've got a really wide perspective. So I was really glad to find some poetry by Adonis that mentioned the sea in some detail, had lots of kind of ideas that focus right in on what it is about the sea that we find so compelling and exciting, and what makes us want to jump in and explore and see what's beyond, and the energy of it and the kind of fuel it gives for our curiosity. So I found some extracts from two poems actually, which were translated by people working in the States, actually Arab translators, and I was really pleased when one put me in touch with the poet's daughter, who gave permission for me to set the works for this piece.
And it's called No Final Shore, which is one of the final lines in the piece.
Yeah.
And I love what that conjures up in our imagination, the idea that we don't have to feel as though we're stuck anywhere at any point in time. There's always somewhere else that we can look to and that we can think about. And are there any particular lines which spoke to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that I found in this poetry. It had loads of moments which were really open for interpretation. And that's the beauty of taking text as a composer, because it's not quite the same as analysing the text for an explanation of what it is from the poet's eyes. What you're really doing is casting it in a new form, and it's impossible to get away from your own interpretation, so that's what you embrace. You find an interpretation of the words. So I really liked, there were certain moments in this that I really liked. I liked when I told them to cut the ropes that bound me to the final shore. I like that, because that's the idea of being free, and the ocean is very, very tied together.
Again, that's I told them to cut the ropes that bound me to the final shore.
Yeah, I have no limits, and that was another phrase. I have no limits, I have no final shore. So there's sort of two elements of using final shore. And
you said that for the altos, the phrase "I have no limits," and they really enjoy singing that phrase. They enjoy singing that. Right, they enjoy singing that phrase so much that when we sent you a recording of our rehearsal, you very politely said, "Yeah, I think the rest of the ensemble might need to support the altos a bit more at that point," because they were delivering it like a sort of klaxon horn message. And then you were very sweet about our decision to writ at the end of the piece, because we felt it was a final statement.
Oh, it's lovely. Really nicely done.
And I think one of the great things about working with composers to realise a new commission is the dialogue that can happen.
Yeah. There you go.
It's been really enjoyable.
That right now in the score, definitely.
Thinking about the music, I'm always fascinated as to how composers set text, because, as you say, it speaks in different ways to different people. And your musical language, which I and many other choral fans are very fond of. I was fortunate I've worked with you before because you wrote a piece for the King Singers, some arabesques a few years ago, and I can remember. I remember them very, very well, but there was one in particular which is absolutely beautiful. Fading is a beautiful, beautiful piece. I love it. But it introduced me to you're very keen on bitonality, aren't you? Or you utilise it. It speaks through your language, and it comes into this piece as well. Could you explain what we mean by bitonality?
That's so interesting. Yeah. So I would say extended harmony rather than bitonality. But I think what you do get sometimes with extended harmony is the feeling of bitonality, because bitonality is like when you've got one key but then you supplant another tonality at the top. So you just got basically like a chord of like C major triad, and then you just put a G, B, D over the top. But basically that is an extended harmony. So you've got the fifth and you've got the ninth. But if you play with that at the top end, then you become aware of that tonality as a tonality rather than just a triad. Mm-hmm. So I suppose that's what you're hearing. But I think I've always enjoyed having a kind of tonal basis to my work, because I feel like you can't really so easily find an emotional language for music which doesn't have any tonality. I mean, there are ways, but it's a less direct, and I like direct messaging. I like to be able to feel it and sentient, like immediacy of what is being said.
What's so enjoyable for us as musicians is that I wouldn't describe your choral compositions as piano music. As you've just described, we talk a lot in the chorale about the difference between just intonation and equal temperament, and pianos are equal temperament, where every, many of you will know this, but on a piano, the difference between every note is identical. But if we're thinking about what we call just intonation, which is actually making chords ring and making harmonies sound the way that they should, you can't work on that basis. You have to work on this cycle of fifths, and ultimately you get through all of the fifths to get all of the notes in the chromatic scale. So when you're talking about extended harmony, we have to think about it in that sense. We have to think about just intonation, and there are chords which you write where you've stacked 3 triads of fourths together. And that's impossible to tune unless you take them apart and you make those 2 sets of stacked fourths work, and then you put them back together, and suddenly the chord shimmers and it works. But if you play it on the piano, it doesn't work. So that's been a real labour of love for us to dive into that extended harmonic language and make it all fit together.
Well, that's good.
It's been really fun finding the tonic. We could never work with a fixed do system in your music. We have to use movable do and think about different tonalities and then put them together. So it's been really fun.
I'm looking forward to hearing them.
It's been really fun. Thank you, Jay.